Alright, hello guys and welcome back. Let's learn some more about functions in the C# programming language. In this video, you have got a couple of functions that you have to create from scratch on your own. So I'm going to present to you the 4 functions that I want you to create. Okay, so the first one is called isEven. This function will take in as a parameter a integer, and it should return true if the number is even and false if the number isn't even. So for example, isEven of 2 would return true and isEven of 5 would return false. The next function that you need to make is called whatisBigger, and this one is going to take in 2 integers as arguments. This function should return the biggest number out of the 2 arguments. So for example, whatisBigger of -2 and 1 would return 1. Next we have got the repeat function that takes in 2 arguments, a string and an integer. This function will print out the string as many times as the number arguments. So for example, repeat of hello 5 would print out to Unity console the string hello 5 times. The last function is the factorial function. So for those who don't know what factorial is, for example, factorial of 5 is 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5. Or factorial of 3 is 1 times 2 times 3. So basically this function should take in an integer and the function will multiply that integer with all the integers before it all the way to 1, and then it should return the results. Alright, so that's it. Pause the video right here, search on the web if you're stuck, and once you're done we'll be back with a correction. Alright, so let's tackle the first problem, which was the isEven function. So first of all, we have to choose what keyword to use. So because this keyword needs to return true or false depending if the number is even or not, we will use the bool keywords. Then I'll name it isEven, and inside of the parentheses I will create an integer argument called number. This function needs to check if the number argument is even or not. So again, to check if a number is even, we will check if number modulo 2 is equal to 0. If it is, then we know that the number is even, so we will return true. Else, if the number is not even, so if it's odd, we will return the keyword false. And that's it. Let's tackle the next problem, which was the whatisBigger function. So this function is going to return the biggest integer out of the 2 integers that we provided. So we will use the int keywords. We will call the function whatisBigger, and we will take in 2 integer arguments called number1 and number2. Then inside of the function, we will check if number1 is greater than number2, and if it is, then we will simply return number1. Else, which means if number2 is bigger than number1, then we will return number2. And there we go, the second function is complete. Let's now move on to the third function, which was the repeat function. So this function is not going to return anything. It's simply going to be printing lines to the console. So I will use the keyword void. Then I will call it repeat, and it will take in as arguments a string called text and the integer called number of repeats. Then inside this function, we will create a for loop. Inside of the parentheses, we will create our integer variable called I that will start at 0. And then we will continue to loop as long as I is less than our number of repeats variable. And each time we go through the loop, we will increment by 1 the variable I. So basically, any code that we put inside of the curly brackets will run as many times as our variable number of repeats. So in our case, we simply want to print out the string text. And there we go. Let's now tackle the last function, which was the factorial function. This one is going to return the result of the factorial, which means that we will use the integer keywords. This function is called factorial, and it will take in as an argument an integer called number. Let's now create an integer variable called results that will start at 1. And at the end of the function, we will return the result variable. Now all we need to do in the middle is multiply the result variable with all the integers below it. So let's create another for loop to help us achieve this. So the for loop will start at 1, it will continue to loop as long as I is less than or equal to the number arguments, and then we will increment I by 1 each time we go through the loop. Alright, so each time we go through a loop, we want the result variable to be equal to result times I. Another way to write this is by saying result times equals I. So for example, if number is equal to 3, well then result will start at 1, and then the first time we go through a loop, I is equal to 1, so result will be multiplied by 1, which won't do anything. Then I will be equal to 2, so we will set the result variable to be equal to itself times 2. And then when we go through the loop a last time, I will be equal to 3, so the result variable will be equal to itself times 3. And once the loop has run, we will just return the result. And there we go. Okay, so a big congrats for those who were able to figure all these problems out. But again, if you didn't, that's okay. Just look through the previous video and even this one again and then attempt to make these functions on your own. Anyways, that's all for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.